Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our How to Go Solar and Storage workshop today. My name is Abby Jager. I'm a program manager with Solar Oregon, and I'll be running our workshop this evening. So on the agenda for today's workshop, we're going to be talking about the different aspects of solar and battery storage. We'll start by taking a look at how solar works. We'll see the components in the system, learn about the process called net metering that allows you to get credit for energy you export to the electric grid, and see how solar can help save you money on your utility bills. Next, we'll take a look at how solar contractors assess your home. We'll see common issues with your site that can increase the cost of solar installation or that can prevent you from being able to go solar altogether. We'll then take a tour through the exciting and popular topic of home energy storage and see how a battery can allow you to use power when the grid is down. After that, we'll learn about the incentives available for solar and battery storage, and we'll walk through several example budgets. We're here to get your questions answered, and after the main presentation, we'll have an extended Q&A session, and any and all questions about solar and battery storage or even related technologies are welcome. While I go through the next few housekeeping slides, I'm just going to start a few polls. These are completely optional, but they just let us know a little bit about who's in the Zoom room with us today and allow us to have some demographic data for some grants as well, which is very helpful for us as an independent nonprofit. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, like I said, we'll be having an extended Q&A at the end, but don't feel like you need to wait until the end to ask your questions. At the bottom of your screen or at the top, depending on how your Zoom room is configured, you should be able to see this Q&A button, and at any point during the presentation, you can put your questions into there. Now, as I said, I'm with the nonprofit Solar Oregon. Solar Oregon is a 501c3 nonprofit that encourages solar and storage adoption throughout Oregon since 1979. We do this by providing reliable and impartial consumer education like this workshop, working to build the clean energy community, and performing outreach and some policy advocacy. We also facilitate solar tours, zero energy showcases, expert panel discussions on a range of topics related to solar and solarized campaigns. You can learn more about us on our website at solaroregon.org, which is also linked in the chat. And thank you so much for today with the poll. I'm going to launch the next one now. This workshop series is supported by Energy Trust of Oregon. Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit established in 2002 that provides resources to help enable customers of the investor-owned utilities PGE, Pacific Power, Avista, and Northwest Natural Gas in Oregon to use energy efficiency and gain access to renewable energy. They offer key incentives for solar installation and battery storage. We will talk more about the Solar Trade Allies later in this presentation. Thank you so much, Energy Trust, for your continued support. And I'm going to end that poll and launch the last one right now. Thank you so much. And with that, we are now going to dive into the presentation. And as I know, so a few more people joined during that time, I'm also going to put some links in the chat again, just so that I can be sure everyone can access them. These are just general resource links that I'll be referencing throughout the presentation. In this diagram, this is a diagram of a typical home solar system. You can see the house in the middle of the diagram. Sunlight strikes the solar panel, labeled here as a photovoltaic or PV panel, and produces a voltage of electricity. This is a special type of electricity called DC electricity, which is different from the AC electricity utilized by your home. From the solar panel, the electricity flows to a special device called an inverter or microinverter to convert that DC electricity to usable AC electricity, which is what your home uses. From there, it then flows into your home electric panel to turn on your lights, charge an electric vehicle, and do everything we do with power in our day-to-day lives. If at any point in time your solar panel is generating more electricity than your home is utilizing, then any excess electricity is sent out to your utility grid to be used by your friends and neighbors via a bidirectional utility meter. So that means a utility meter that's able to track the electricity flow in both directions, both what is flowing out of your home and what is flowing into it. Because conversely, that meter also allows you to draw power from the grid if at any point in time your solar panels are not offsetting all of your electricity usage, such as at night when there is not any sun out. So now we're going to take a closer look at the inverters that convert the DC electricity generated by the solar panels into the AC electricity for your home. There are two options available, both inverters and microinverters. The white box in the image on the left is an inverter, sometimes called a string inverter. It accepts electricity from all your solar panels and converts it all at once. So if you have 10 solar panels, you would have only one inverter. The inverter is typically installed on the wall immediately next to your electrical panel, aka your breaker box. However, if space is not available near the breaker box, it can also be installed outside. In this case, there may be an extra cost due to a longer conduit run. The smaller black boxes pictured in the image on the right are microinverters. These are installed immediately beneath the solar panels, and each microinverter takes in electricity from only one or two solar panels. So if you have 10 solar panels, you could have up to 10 microinverters converting the electricity. Both inverters and microinverters are great options that are installed frequently throughout Oregon. Your contractor may suggest one or the other for you just based on the specific needs of your system, but both are great and are installed frequently. In order to be ready for solar, your panel main breaker needs to be rated for at least 200 amps in most cases. Larger homes will require a larger breaker for solar, while some smaller homes may be able to manage with less amperage. Common signs that you'll need to replace your electric panel before installing solar panels include your main breaker is rated for less than 200 amps. You plan to install solar battery storage and/or an EV charger now or in the future. You plan to install more electric appliances like a heat pump or heat pump water heater, or you plan to install a pool or hot tub now in the future, or if you're already experiencing issues with your current electric panel, like tripped breakers or flickering lights. So essentially anything that would drastically increase the amount of electricity you're needing to pull is something you want to be planning for while you're installing your solar in order to be able to deal with it now. And in some cases, you may even be required if you're already having issues or if you don't have enough amperage to add solar panels to your current electric panel. Now, when it comes to where you put your solar panels can be mounted either on your roof or as a ground mount. Roof-mounted systems account for the vast majority of solar installed on homes and businesses, especially in dense urban areas where ground space is not available. Ground-mounted systems can be a great option with families with more space. However, because they still need to be wired into your home's electric panel, ground mounts installed far from home can increase the total cost of the system. This cost is partially due to the high price of copper and wiring, as well as expenses included in burying the wire underground. So now that I've gone through some of the basics of what's included in a solar system and some things you might want to consider, I'm now going to go through the exciting topic known as net metering, which is how that electricity you pull from the grid and export to the grid is tracked and helps save you money, and how solar in general can help you save money. As mentioned earlier, when your solar system is producing excess electricity, it gets exported to the grid where it can be utilized by your neighbors. Net metering is the process that allows you to account for that energy. So I'm going to illustrate how this works by walking through two examples, a typical sunny summer month and a typical cloudy winter month. The graph on the left here shows how this the graph on the left shows it what's happening in a summer month. So if we think back to a day kind of like today, it was pretty sunny today, but let's think about July when it was nice and hot and sunny. The orange bar shows how much electricity you've produced with your solar panels, which is a whole bunch because it was nice and sunny. And yet the amount you've needed to use is only about half that. So you've exported all that excess electricity and the difference between those two bars out to the grid. The green arrow shows the difference here, which will become your net metering credits earned. And then we have this graph on the right, which shows a typical winter month. So a day kind of like today, but let's pretend it was a little bit cloudier, even a little bit more gray. Maybe it was raining, where you are still using a similar amount of electricity. We still have our lights and computers running. We're running heat. We're doing all the things. And so our consumption stays about the same. However, the amount of solar that our panels are producing is much less. Our solar panels will still produce on cloudy days, but it will be much less. So in order to make up for that difference, you have to draw power from the grid. The red arrow shows the amount of electricity you'll need to purchase. And with net metering, the credits you earn during the sunny summer months offset the electricity you purchase in the cloudy winter months. While your net metering credits roll over from month to month, it's important to note that does not roll over from year to year. The net metering year begins in April. This allows you to build up credits during the sunny months and use them all winter. Any excess credits you have in March when the net metering year ends are donated to low-income customers and some nonprofits. So now that I've talked about how that works, let's look at how it actually works in practice and what it might look like on your electric bill. So here's an example of your monthly electric bill if you were to have solar, and we can walk through. So you can see here the net meter reading at the beginning of the month and the net meter reading at the end of the month, and then the difference between those numbers. So we can see that this customer generated negative 327 kilowatt hours. That means they exported 327 kilowatt hours out to the grid. Those that become net metering credits and were added to their year-to-bank excess generation. So those are those credits that build up all winter. And their billable kilowatt hours for the month are 0 because they exported more than they used, so they don't need to pay for any extra electricity. However, with that being said, this bill is not $0.00. In order to be connected to the grid at all, there is a minimum monthly fees as well as some taxes and charges that everyone pays in order to be connected to the grid here in Portland, and in Oregon in general. Those charges are about $12 to $18 per month, but it can depend a little bit on where you are in the state. And while it would be nice to get a bill for $0.00, $12 to $18 is much less than the average Oregon utility bill, which is usually between $70 and $100. And it will not be subject to the same rate increases that regular electricity use will be. And so with all that being said, this is how solar can help save you money by building up those credits all summer and then using them all winter. Solar is highly modular. From that first diagram, we could see how simple really a solar system is. And residential solar systems vary widely in size. System size is measured in a unit called kilowatts or kW, and the average residential size in Oregon is 8 kilowatts. What determines your system size is your consumption. So your solar contractor will work with you and ask to probably see some of your old electricity bills in order to help figure out what size system you need. Your solar system size will be you want to meet but not exceed your expected electricity usage. That is because, again, net metering credits roll over month to month and not year to year. That means you don't really want to build larger than you need just to be exporting excess credits and not getting any kickback for that. Unfortunately, your utility company will not give you a check at the end of the year for those excess credits. They are forfeited. So your solar contractor will be sure to talk to you about how much electricity that you use generally, and then also any anticipated life changes or lifestyle changes that may impact your electricity usage, such as someone moving in or out of your home, switching between gas and electric water heaters, purchasing an electric vehicle, or having someone move in or out of your home. Other factors that can limit your system size are available roof space, budget, or limitations placed by an HOA or condo association. So now with all that information about solar in general, how can you know if your home is right for solar? No matter where you are in the state, the orientation of your roof has a big impact on your solar access. The diagram on the screen shows a home and its orientation with respect to the cardinal directions. The arcs over the home show the path of the sun in the summer and the winter. Regardless of the season, the sun will always be in the southern sky. This means that south-facing roofs are ideal for solar. However, both west and east-facing roofs can work great. In cloudier parts of the state, roofs facing east can be slightly less effective, but both east and west-facing roofs are still utilized frequently. The only roof plane that consistently don't get installed are north, northwest, and northeast facing. Even if you have a perfectly south-facing roof, shade from objects like trees and buildings can prevent you from receiving enough solar resource. However, it can be hard to self-assess whether shading your roof receives will negatively impact you. Your solar contractor will be able to assess this for you with precision, either using special measurement devices or satellite-based software. And if your home is very well shaded, there are options such as community solar that can still allow you to support the solar industry, get a discount on your utility bill without cutting down any of the big, beautiful trees in Oregon, as those are still providing some great shade and natural cooling to your home and are not something we want to lose. One of the biggest factors that can affect whether you're able to go solar is your roof condition. Your roof will need to be replaced when it reaches the end of its lifetime. And when you do that, you'll need to pay a solar contractor to uninstall and reinstall your system. This service can cost lots, so it's very important to plan ahead. We recommend you have at least 10 years of roof life left when you install solar. And if you're needing to replace your roof soon, you wait and do that first before going solar. Another thing that can impact your ability to go solar is your roof complexity. If you have a very complex roof, it can be some added cost to go solar, as your solar installer may need to have multiple smaller arrays instead of one longer continuous array, or you may be limited in the amount of solar you can fit on your roof overall. And just like what's on top of your roof matters, what's under your roof matters too. Your roof needs to be able to sustain the weight of the solar panels and added wind resistance and all of that. And so you need to ensure that your home has adequate supports to support the solar system if you're doing a roof mounted system. Newer homes tend to have trusses. These extra vertical and horizontal support beams meet even the strictest requirements for solar. If you're in an older home that is lacking the extra support beam and might just have rafters, you may need to either work with a contractor to prove either your rafters are sufficient in order to support solar, or add in some trusses, which your contractor can help you with, but can lead to some added cost. In rare cases, your home may not be able to meet local code requirements, even with reinforcements. You can also be prevented from going solar if your attic is inaccessible or there's not enough roof for your contractor to perform reinforcement. So now that I've gone through some of those details, I'm going to dive into the exciting topic of battery storage. And now it's important to note that your solar system by itself will not allow you to use solar power or any power during a power outage. To do this, you'll need to add a battery. The ability to use power when the grid is down is called energy resilience. Power outages vary in their cause, their frequency, and their duration. Frequent short outages are usually caused by storms or squirrels, and in some areas, slightly longer outages in the summer months can be caused by red flag weather conditions where the power company will actually shut down the power grid in order to decrease the fire risk in an area. In the Pacific Northwest, we also face the unique risk of a large earthquake, the Cascadia earthquake. When this event occurs, it's thought that power may be lost in the Willamette Valley for up to 6 weeks. On the coast or other rural parts of the state, power may not be restored for several months. It's important to know what type of outage you're expecting so that your contractor can design a system that will meet your needs. When choosing a battery, there are many quality options. However, because of manufacturer certifications, contractors often specialize in a specific brand. To compare battery technologies, you may need to get quotes from multiple contractors, which we recommend you do anyway. It's also important to know that you can't mix and match battery brands. So if you already have a battery by brand A, you will not be able to add on a battery by brand B. However, your solar panels and your battery can be different brands. Battery capacities are measured in kWh or kilowatt hours. Most batteries range from 10 to 14 kilowatt hours, and smaller units are around 3 to 4, while larger ones go up to 20. In Oregon, the average battery size is 13.5 kilowatt hours. When it comes to getting a battery, it's important to set your expectations properly about what a battery can do and what it cannot do. Even if you don't use much electricity, a single battery will almost never back up your entire home for a meaningful period of time. However, you can do what is called a partial home backup. In this scenario, certain circuits in your home will receive power from the battery during an outage, but the rest of your home will lose power. If you're able and willing to front the extra costs, multiple batteries can allow you to achieve a whole home backup, but this process is prohibitively expensive for most consumers, but it is a simple and more efficient process overall. Doing a partial home backup will also lead to some extra cost, as we'll be discussing in the next slide. When you get a partial home backup, the way you divide your home into sections that are backed up and sections that are not is based on the breakers in your electric panel. When you've selected which circuits you'd like to receive battery power, your contractor will remove those breakers and place them in a newly installed smaller essential loads panel. This second electric panel will be rewired to the battery. In the event of an outage, only the second panel will receive power while your main breaker will be fully shut off. There are also newer technologies like smart breakers or smart electric panels that can provide more customization and flexibility, such as being able to move certain breakers from the essential panel from the essential area to the non-essential area via an app, but those are more expensive and are still very new to market. If you have an older home, you may need to upgrade your electric panel before you go solar, as we previously discussed as well. The battery system sizing process will entail a detailed discussion with your contractor, balancing your desired functionality with your budget. A great way to think of this process is a trade-off between what needs power and for how long. The more items you have, more breakers you have connected to the battery, the less time your battery will last, but you also want to keep yourself as comfortable as you can for however long the outage is. Items most frequently chosen to back up include a refrigerator to keep food from spoiling, lights in common areas, and a couple outlets to be able to charge some devices. Now that I've gone through all these technologies, I'm going to go through some of the incentives and financing as well as sharing some example budgets. So the biggest incentive available here in Oregon are the Energy Trust incentives. Energy Trust incentives are based on your utilities. So if you are a Portland General Electric customer, you'll receive $2,500 for solar and $400 per kilowatt hours, up to $5,000 for storage. And for Pack Power, you get that same solar, but for storage, it is $320 per kilowatt hour, up to $4,000. You can receive this incentive whether you install solar and storage at the same time or separately. And the only thing you as a customer have to do in order to receive this incentive is work with an Energy Trust of Oregon Trade Ally contractor. These are contractors that have gone through a rigorous screening program by Energy Trust and are familiar with all Energy Trust design and installation requirements, and will apply for this incentive and receive it on your behalf, and you will just see the discount on your bill. You have to do no extra work past picking a Trade Ally contractor, and at the end of the presentation, I will be talking about how to find one. It also is important to know that the availability of incentives varies and are subject to funding availability and current policies. Right now, what's on the screen are actually the 2026 incentives, as those have been released early, as the 2025 incentives already filled up for this year, and we are approaching the end of the year. And so these incentives are subject to change, and depending on when you apply for your solar, they might be a little bit different than what I am showing you right now. In addition to the standard solar incentive, Energy Trust also offers Solar Within Reach, which is an income qualified incentive. Solar Within Reach is a cost per watt incentive and allows PGE and Pacific Power customers to reduce their installation costs. The cutoff for Solar Within Reach is very generous and is listed on the screen, and you can scan the QR code to see if you qualify. Oh, apologies. I just skipped like 4 slides. Because solar and battery storage entail large upfront costs, many homeowners utilize financing. Some homeowners obtain a loan through a bank for which they have an existing relationship, but some banks do not provide loan products specifically tailored to solar. Your contractor may partner with a credit union or third-party broker that offers a package that is geared towards solar. And as with any major financial decision, make sure you carefully assess your financing options. Energy Trust of Oregon recently launched their Smart E-Loans in partnership with Solar Trade Allies and Inclusive Property Capital, a 501c3 clean energy financing platform. Energy Trust Smart E-Loans can be used to install solar and battery storage, and electric vehicle charger, and enabling upgrades or repairs. There are some benefits of the Smart E-Loans, such as transparency, no fee or prepayment penalties, low FICO credit scores, flexible terms, rates as low as 6.99%, and an easy application process. The reach of the Smart E-Lending program is limited to BGE and Pacific Power customers in Energy Trust's service area. However, you can check out your local bank or credit union to see if they offer something similar. But if you are within Energy Trust territory, this is another great option to help with financing. And I will put a link to in the chat that in case anyone would like more information on this product. Before we look at some example budgets for solar and storage, we should recap the reasons why both solar and battery storage costs vary so widely. The cost of solar depends on the size of the system, re-roofing, structural analysis, structural reinforcement. The cost of battery storage can depend on if you're installing solar and storage at the same time versus in 2 separate steps, as installation, distance from the electric panel, if you're creating an essential load panel, and how many batteries you're getting. In addition, availability of incentives can affect costs for both solar and storage. And for these reasons and more, it is impossible to quote the price of solar without having more information about your home. So please keep this in mind as I show the example budget. So here's the example budget. So we can see the cost for an average 8 kilowatt solar system is $32,000, while the cost for a solar and storage system of 8 kilowatts and 3.5 kilowatt hours respectively is about 52,000. From there, you can then get those Energy Trust incentives I talked about, and that makes a total out-of-pocket cost to you, the customer, $29,500 for solar or $44,500 for a solar storage system. As I said, income qualified incentives can save you additional money, and there can also be a typically increased cost if you're installing solar and storage separately. So now with all this information, how can you get started? Besides offering incentives for solar, Energy Trust of Oregon has a certification program that I already talked about, the Energy Trust Trade Ally. Trade Ally contractors are rigorously vetted, highly rated, and are the only contractors who can offer you Energy Trust solar and storage incentives. We highly recommend working with the Trade Ally contractor and getting at least 3 quotes to help you compare. Whenever you are ready, you can get those 3 quotes by scanning the QR code on the screen, which will take you to the Energy Trust Solar Bid Tool. You will then fill out an online form that will take only 3 to 5 minutes complete, and then you will be connected with up to 3 contractors that work in your area and will provide you with some information about getting solar on your home. This in no way commits you to those contractors, but is a great way to get some free information and see if solar is the right fit for you. Once you've selected your contractor, received quotes, and signed your contract, here's what you can expect regarding the installation process. Your contractor will handle all permitting, applying for Energy Trust, and incentives on your behalf, and designing your system. It's important to remember that they will need your signature on some of these documents. So make sure you are checking your email and staying in touch with your contractor. Although system design can be quick, some jurisdictions are still having permitting delays, and some counties have longer permitting times than other. For example, Multnomah County frequently experiences long delays. However, once it's time to break ground, installation is very quick. Most residential systems are installed usually within 1 or 4 days, making it a relatively painless process. Installation for solar is usually pretty quick. It can take more time if you have a complex system design or if you're adding batteries. After the system is installed, your contractor will manage your permit inspections and coordinate the installation of your new bidirectional meter and schedule your interconnection with the utility. This can take 2 to 3 weeks, but eventually, all you'll have to, once you're interconnected, your system will be producing clean, renewable power from the sunlight, and all you have to do is turn on your light to use it. So now that I've gone through kind of the basics of how you can go solar, I'm now here to answer your questions. So as I said at the beginning, please put your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And while everyone's thinking of those questions, I'm also going to launch the final poll. If you have any questions, please put them in the QA box. I want to make sure everyone gets their questions answered. If there are no more questions, but if there are no questions, then thank you so much for coming. I hope everyone has a great evening, but I'm going to leave the webinar open for another minute or so just so that we can make sure the questions get answered if there are any. I'll also put the links I shared at the beginning of the presentation back into the chat just in case anyone wants to find that added information as well. Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you have a great evening. If you have any questions, you can contact me at the email in the chat. We'll be happy to answer your questions via email. And I've also put the email. You can also check out support our work by donating and becoming a member today, or you can follow us on social media and Eventbrite at Solar Oregon. And I just saw a question come in to the chat. Someone asked if they're able to use Energy Trust of Oregon for design purposes as they are interested in DIYing a system. So Energy Trust of Oregon doesn't actually design solar systems. They just work with contractors who do. If you're interested in DIYing, there's lots of information online that you can find about that. And maybe you could find a contractor who'd be willing to work with you on that, but that's typically not within Energy Trust of Oregon's wheelhouse. Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and end the presentation, but I hope everyone has a lovely evening.